You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello and welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. This week I'm delighted to be joined by the founder and the commercial director of the ESTAS, Simon Brown and Ben Marley, respectively. Thank you very much indeed for joining the podcast, chaps.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, David.
You're going to tell us what the ESTAS are, but spoiler alert, it's a review platform for the property market, estate agents and conveyancers predominantly, as I understand it. But my first question to you both, tell us a little bit about who you both are, a little bit about your backgrounds, please. And then we're going to launch into what conveyancers need to know about review platforms.
I'm Simon Brown. Started the ESTAS 20 years ago, and it started as an award scheme, but we wanted to do something different. So it was always based on customer reviews. But in the old days, 20 years ago, it was literally paper reviews, which was sent out by the agent or the conveyancer to their customers at the end of the transaction, and then they posted them back to us, and we input them into a very, very basic computer database. Over the years, obviously, things have developed, the internet's developed, got faster and faster, and all organically, our clients were saying, look, we really like the data that we're getting back here. We want to be able to access it on a permanent basis. So it sort of turned into a review platform before we even knew it. That's the way it's grown, really. We still have the awards every year, as you know, which are every October, and they include agents and conveyancers and mortgage brokers and suppliers to the sector as well. But the review platform and reviews in general obviously have become absolutely integral to any firm's marketing. So that's my background.
So I'm Ben, I'm the commercial director at the ESTAS. So very, very brief background on me. So I've been working in the property sector now since 2014. Did a stint at Rightmove, and then before moving into the online review space, which we're doing now, this is my 8th year working in that sector as well. So got a bit of a black belt now in doing that. And my role is very much around the kind of, I guess, the sales, the product development of the ESTAS and the platform, and how we can best help and serve our customers moving forward.
It's really interesting. Thank you. Simon, you and I have talked before about benefits of using review platforms, and we're going to talk about that in a wider sense. But the ESTAS is very specifically a closed review platform as opposed to an open review platform. Could you just explain and elaborate on what the difference between the two is, please?
Yeah, I can. I mean, we call it closed. That's more of a sort of an internal phrase. It's an invite-only platform, I think, is probably the best way to describe it to the uninitiated. The best example of an open platform would be Trustpilot. Anybody can leave a review of your products and services, whether they've used them or not. Whereas with an invite-only platform, of which we are one, only customers that you've obviously worked with are able to leave a review, because you send the link to them, you invite them to leave you a review at the end of the transaction. We very specifically say to our clients that it has to be at the very end of the transaction, and obviously a property transaction is probably the longest transaction that any consumer will make in their lifetime, certainly at the moment. So that for us is why the reviews are so powerful. But we believe that the invite only route is the best way to go. There are lots and lots of pitfalls in the open area in terms of fake reviews. We believe that by keeping it invite only, the firm that's using it, that subscribes to us, has control. And having control is so important when you're in the whole review space, because if you're not careful, you can end up firefighting. These reviews have a life of their own with social media, etc., etc. So we think that the invite-only route is the way to go.
The counter to that is going to be that the invite-only route is open to manipulation. Ben, that's an easy target, surely.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that both invitation only or open versus closed, which is better, look, both have their merits for different reasons. And I think what we need to do is kind of take a view here and just say what's going to be the most beneficial for the end consumer. Because whilst a lot of people will often talk about this is better for our customers, as in the conveyancers or the estate agents or the brokers, it's the end consumer that's actually using these reviews to come out of our world and go into another world. So if you looked at two different platforms, for example, TripAdvisor was kind of the big pioneer of the online review space. They used to and still do operate on an open basis. So anyone who has walked into a restaurant and not actually sat down at a table could write a review based on their experience. By contrast to that, someone who, just say for example, like booking.com is invite only. So you actually have to have stayed at a hotel in order to be able to have left a review on booking.com. Now, what has happened over time is that TripAdvisor has now changed their business model as a result of the fact that their reviews have become less trusted because there was a number of fake reviews that were on there. Booking.com is very much kind of revered as being all of the reviews that you see are genuine. And I think that's the main point for the consumer, is that if you know that all of the reviews are genuine, then that gives you far better case to make a sound judgment over which company that you are best to represent you in the situation that you're about to go into.
I'll just add one extra thing to that, David. But and this is something that we've invested a lot of time and money in, is auditing the reviews. We have a team of auditors that actually look at the reviews that are coming in from any property firm that uses us, and we're constantly looking at their accounts, looking at the reviews. We make phone calls, manually contacting those customers that have made the reviews. And look, I'm not saying it's absolutely watertight, but everybody that uses us knows that we go through that process. And if we do find, let's say, over enthusiastic firms who are trying to generate reviews, then we come down on them like a ton of bricks. And there aren't that many other platforms out there that are doing that sort of due diligence.
There's this drive, isn't there, by the super regulator, the Legal Services Board, to create greater consumer choice in legal services. Where in the consumer's thinking, planning, do reviews currently sit? Are we seeing evidence that reviews are actually creating greater transparency in legal services?
Yeah, the answer is yes. I think it depends what legal services you're looking at. I've got an example of my own, actually. Just before Christmas, myself and my wife Sarah, who also works in the business, we said to ourselves, we've got to sort out a new will for ourselves. Been looking at it, keep saying we're going to do it, haven't done it. So we wanted to use a local solicitor. Don't really know any of them, and I then asked my financial advisor. I said, "Do you know a local solicitor that's good at putting wills together?" He gave me a recommendation from somebody that he's worked with. I immediately then looked them up on Google, and two other local solicitors came up, as they always do. You get the map with three on there, and I then looked at the Google reviews of the solicitor that was recommended compared to the other two. And even though I had a good word of mouth recommendation from somebody that I knew and trusted, the reviews didn't stack up. Whereas the other solicitor, one in particular, the reviews were more recent. They had every review had a reply to it, so the solicitor had replied to each customer review, and based on that, and I didn't look at costs. Costs to me wasn't relevant. I knew roughly that it was probably going to cost sort of between £300 and maybe £500, but I wanted to make sure that the service that I got and the will that we ended up with was robust enough and worked for us. And so my decision in the end was based on the reviews rather than the word of mouth recommendation that I'd got previously.
For anyone out there who's unfamiliar with the DMA, they are the Data and Marketing Association. They there was a paper that they released a few years ago that says statistically only 1 in 4 verbal recommendations will actually go through to contact someone without being checked out online.
Yeah.
So for every 4 recommendations that someone is making, only 1 of those is actually gone, brilliant, thanks, I'll give them a ring, and going and doing that without actually going online and looking someone up. And I think it's really interesting the way that we are channeled now to look, the way that we explore things. So for example, I think it's probably fair to say that Google it is probably one of the top 5 most universal terms out there now, and it's almost just like a bit of a foregone, because the way that we use search engines like a phone directory. When someone says to you, oh, give these guys a ring, they don't say here's their number, because within 5 seconds you could have typed the company name into a search engine and got their telephone number. But what happens with that is that the first thing you see is someone's Google reviews, the very, very first thing, because that is the first thing that appears on the screen on a mobile phone, which again comes back to kind of why we do what we do in terms of helping businesses to generate reviews online, but also helping those reviews go through to Google, why that's so important. The amount of businesses that say to me, oh, all of our business is done through recommendation. So I would challenge those people and say that only means that you're getting a quarter of the recommendations that you actually think you are.
There's another stat, isn't there, from Google themselves, from their own research, which says that 70% of a consumer's buying decision has been made before they make direct contact with you, because of the amount of online due diligence we're all doing, with any product, whether it be a phone, a kettle, a holiday, a restaurant, a car, because we're doing that amount of online due diligence, because we're in control of it, aren't we? We feel we're in control of it if we're on, we're on Google or, looking at websites, and they're making 70% of their buying decision before they make direct contact with that firm, whatever service that is.
Lawyers love a good stat. If I can throw another one into the mix, it's 7 to 12 touch points, isn't it, between coming across an organization and actually making a buying decision, and reviews as one part of that process is absolutely a touch point, isn't it? So here's the $1 million question then. Are conveyancers getting engaged in online reviews? Are you seeing an uplift in your business across the industry?
We are, but we started with estate agents. That's the original business model was estate agents, and then that went to letting agents and conveyancers. I would say at the moment, agents look at a customer review platform as a must-have. And Ben, you would probably bear this out, but I think if you looked across, there's 18,000 businesses in the UK, and I would say that probably 70 to 80% of those businesses are using at least one review platform. I think that most conveyancers at the moment still see it as a nice to have rather than an essential marketing tool, and I think that comes from the fact that most conveyancers, and I'm generalizing here, aren't marketeers by nature. They're not salespeople. They're very good at what they do. They don't have the same sales mentality that most estate agents have. Ben, would you bear that out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we need to kind of really consider here is that estate agents have fed the local conveyancer for a long time. Nowadays, the internet has kind of revolutionized the way that we operate. And again, coming back to the whole Google it kind of universal term, you don't have to deal with a local conveyancer anymore. Your conveyancer could be anywhere in the country. Google will choose very quickly whether they want to promote a business or not. And there are multiple factors that they bring into that, more than 200 factors. For example, if you do a conveyancer local search, so I live in Chichester in West Sussex. If I do a search for conveyancer or solicitor in near me, or solicitor in Chichester, it's probably going to bring back more than 1 million findings in less than half a second. For a conveyancer, how on earth are they going to suddenly put themselves at the forefront? Reviews, whether a business likes it or not, and this isn't just in conveyancing or an estate agent, this is every single bricks and mortar business now, must be collecting reviews. If they're not, Google is just discount them straight away. If you're based in Morecambe, why can't you pick up a client in Chelmsford? And vice versa. You don't need to be just permanently thinking about how do I promote myself in the local market. You don't need to be based near anyone. You've got to make sure that you are doing everything you can so that when a consumer finds you, that they go, this business is as good as what I'm reading on the website. If your website is not up to scratch, if your reviews aren't up to scratch, you're going to get discounted both by Google and the consumer straight away. The consumer won't even find you. If the consumer does find you by chance or virtue or however that they've been searching, they will discount you because they will find someone else whose website looks better, whose reviews are far better. And who are they going to believe? People, if you've got 150 reviews over the last few years of people that have gone through that process, that have used the service, are they going to believe that, or are they going to believe a static old website that's got 2 reviews, or testimonials, even worse, it just says, I used so-and-so and they were great from 3 years ago?
And we see that, believe me, we still see them, a lot of them. We have a widget which streams the reviews live to a website. And we still have a lot of clients that aren't using that widget, and it's an ongoing frustration for us. And we have an account management team that's constantly looking at our client websites, and we've got clients that have got 50, 60, 100 plus reviews, and we say, why aren't you displaying them on your website? It's literally a little piece of code which you can embed in your website. It takes literally minutes to do. It's not just about having a stack of reviews. They've got to be coming in constantly. They've got to be recent, and Google will look at not just how many reviews you've got, but whether you've replied to those reviews or not. They want to see you interacting with the customer the whole time, and that improves your algorithm as far as Google's concerned. I mean, it is an absolute minefield, and it's more work on top of what is already an incredibly difficult job, but it's something that every firm has to do to make sure that they are seen by the consumer.
We're talking at a time when the average transaction length has probably doubled over the past couple of years. We're now 20 weeks, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What are the reviews saying? What are you seeing as trends in responses from people that are being reviewed or asked for reviews by conveyancers?
I think the one thing that I notice is, and it's easy for us to forget this, being in the industry, is how stressful and how complicated a lot of these transactions are, and the reasons behind them. Sometimes, it's not everybody just wanting to move house to a bigger home because they've got more money or whatever. Sometimes it's because of death, divorce, whatever it is. And it's very easy, as a conveyancer. I know all you see is you see the transaction, don't you? You don't see the stories behind it. I mean, I wouldn't say I look at the reviews and see that the better conveyancers are getting the transaction through quicker. The word trust is used a lot. The word they held my hand all the way through the process. communication, sorting out problems. I mean, there's always problems, and it's inevitable. But that's when customer service really kicks in, isn't it? Is how a conveyancer reacts to a problem or an issue, and that's the one thing I think that comes through from the reviews that I see. It's that they really helped us, and they really sorted the problems out. You do see the bad reviews. That I think the lack of communication is one of the biggest bugbears of all. That there has been an excuse for lack of communication over the last sort of 18 months, while the market's been in the frenzy that it has been. But there isn't the same excuse going forward, because we all know, transaction levels are going to be coming down. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there.
And Ben, what's the consumer sentiment out there? We're sat here. We don't always see the wood for the trees, do we? And there's a lot of doom and gloom in the market. Length of transaction, inquiries, lots of issues between estate agents and conveyancers. But what's consumer sentiment out there in terms of the delivery of conveyancing?
It's such a hot topic right now, because your average home mover isn't moving that often. So for these guys, this is the first. This might be the first time ever, or the last time ever, that they move. And I think for a lot of people, they're often quite surprised as to how long everything's been taken, and that is probably down to, dare I say, a lack of communication from all parties concerned, between agent, conveyancer and broker, whereby no one wants to tell the Mr. Customer, great news, you've just gone under offer. Bad news is probably going to take 6 months now to go through, when historically everyone kind of talks about the kind of 8 to 12 week period. That ship has well and truly sailed, and I think people are genuinely surprised as to how long things are taking now, searches, etc., that are all going through, and that's without any hurdles being put in front of people. So in terms of the sentiment that's kind of being said, I think there's the proverbial hitting the wall, that people are a bit like, oh crikey, this happened, this didn't happen. But kind of just going back to what Simon was saying, the difference between, I don't want to call them the average conveyancer, but the wheat from the chaff, if you like, is the guys that are actually then taking that on board and going, right, how do we get this transaction through? What are we going to do about it? And that is then resonated in the content that is then written by the end consumer. So it's kind of almost like there's almost like a bit of a story that people are often telling. Started out all good, then there was the despair, then it was how you're going to solve these problems, and we finally got there in the end.
Yeah, coming back to what you just said, Ben, because I think that's a really important point. It used to be, I remember when we first bought our first house, and I think the average was that people moved every 7 years. Well, now it's 20 plus.
20, yeah.
Your average homeowner, your average first time buyer, average is 38, 39 years old. So they don't understand the process. When you're doing it every 7 years, you sort of go, oh yeah, I remember now. We've got to, we get the conveyancer involved, and you learn from previous transactions. If I get a conveyancer lined up early, I've got a better chance of getting the transaction through earlier. Whereas now, I think agents need to educate. Some of the good ones they need to educate the sellers and buyers. I mean, I sold a house for my mother a few years ago, and the house was on the market for a while. Eventually, we got a buyer, and then the agent turned around and said, "So who's your conveyancer?" If he'd have said to me when we put the house on the market, "Get your conveyancer lined up now," it would have saved us probably the best part of 3 weeks to a month. That takes 4 weeks off your transaction time straight away. So I think a lot of the problem is that the consumer doesn't understand the process, and conveyancers aren't very good at demystifying the process. They do like to hide behind the legal jargon, because that to a certain degree justifies the price and the fees. And coming back to what you were saying about the ASB, transparency, and I think demystifying the conveyancing process is really important. And if you can do that as a conveyancer, you're going to have more trustworthy clients. Clients are going to trust you more if they can understand a little bit of what you're actually doing, on their behalf.
This is probably a bit like turkeys voting for Christmas, but there's a projected market downturn, normalization, recalibration, whatever you want to call it, this year. Will we see the conveyancing market embrace more ways to differentiate their service offering from their competitors? And dare I say, are reviews one way to do that?
The obvious answer is hopefully yes. The good conveyancers will be looking at the way they market their services, because as we all know, for the last 2 years, they've been turning business away. They haven't been able to cope with the business that's come through the window. But that window may not completely close, but it's certainly not going to be as open as it was before. So they have to look at the way that they market their services. And yes, customer reviews has to be an integral part of your marketing mix. It's not expensive. It's probably more expensive in time than it is in actual costs. I mean, to be a subscriber to ESTAS is £89 a month. It's not a huge amount of money, but you do need to invest some time in it, because getting your reviews in the right places is not always that easy, and it can make the difference, given that people are doing so much due diligence online before they even pick up the phone.
Well, I'm actually going to throw a question to you on this, David, just as we've been chatting. I just looked it up. People are searching for a solicitor every single month. Okay, just in the UK, David, per month, how many times do you think a combination of solicitor near me and conveyancer near me, how many times a month?
That's a tricky one. 60,000 times.
82,000 times
That's not
a month.
a bad guess, is it?
You add that up over the year, that is just shy of 1 million times a year that someone in this country is sat down at a device, whether it be a phone, laptop, tablet, whatever, and they are looking for the services of a solicitor. 1 million times a year. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of searches that are currently being done. So if people aren't embracing it, there's 1 million of people out there who are looking for those services. And as we alluded to earlier, don't need to be local anymore. If you're not there, if you're not presenting yourselves, someone else will be.
Well, as a message to leave the podcast on, I think that's quite a strong message. The conveyances marketing mix, I think, probably should include reviews as a matter of course. As you say, Simon, it seems to be very much the norm in estate agency, and whilst conveyancers may not consider themselves to be particularly similar to estate agents, the property market is embracing reviews one way or another, dare I say. That's as much as we've got time for today. It's been fantastic to have you both on the podcast. Thank you very much indeed, Ben, for joining.
Thanks, David. It's been really good fun.
And thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. My thanks to Ben and Simon. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.